Now, I appreciate you checking out this video. Before I continue, I want you to go to theultimatejetguide.com, where I've put together a full guide for jet buyers like yourself. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Tom here with JetLife Aero, and today I'm joined by Eric Craig, who's been kind enough to join me today on a quick little interview about aircraft financing. And Eric has been in the game for over 15 years in specialty asset lending, and we were able to connect over LinkedIn. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about himself, about the company he works with, and then I'm just going to pepper in with some rapid fire questions that most buyers are going to have when it comes to aircraft lending. So, Eric, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. Like Tom said, my name is Eric Craig. I've been in specialty asset lending for 15 plus years. I've been on the origination side. I've been on the lending side. Actually ran a specialty asset division at a credit union for a few years. Gave me plenty of insight to the aircraft market. We also did marine and RV and some classic and exotic cars. Started a commercial division there specific to aircraft. So, pretty good all around, background with the lending side. So looking forward to answer some questions for you, Tom.
Yeah, I appreciate that for sure. And tell us a little bit about the company that you work with, and if people want to find out more information about them.
Sure. Lending Associates has been around for about 12 years. They're out of St. Petersburg, Florida. I came to them. They've been doing aircraft lending for pretty much throughout. Their focus their traditional focus was marine lending, RV lending, but there's some carryover cross-selling into aircraft. So they've cultivated relationships with aircraft lenders throughout, and they brought me on to expand on those relationships, not just with some of their referring brokers, but help their salespeople out with some of the aircraft crossover.
Nice. Very cool. Well, let's talk about aircraft lending in 2023. We've seen kind of a historic last couple of years for private aviation, especially when it comes to pricing and lending. And now we're going into 2023. I know a lot of buyers are kind of curious, like what it's going to look like, because it's going to be a different landscape from the previous 2 years. Can you tell us a little about what you see ahead of 2023 and how that's going to differ from what we've had in the past year or two?
Sure. Rates probably the number one item on people's list. It's probably the number one focus, especially from the consumer side. The buyers, the clients, they're very in tune with, seeing the changes in rate or the rate changing environment over the last few months. I think that's going to continue, although I think there's a little bit of a bite initially. There's usually a 6 to 9 month lag with people understanding what the current rate environment is. And then when you see these swift changes in rates, it takes a little while for people to catch up and get accustomed to what the current rates are. Buying power is obviously a concern, similar to many industries. As the rates go up, buying power goes down. So, it is something to be aware of, concerned, maybe over the next quarter or so, first quarter of the year, in regards to catching people up with current rates. People are still trying to negotiate rates down into the, low fives. I've heard that a few times, especially in December, when people are trying to close, right before the end of the year. But it is something that'll continue to be a topic of conversation. It's probably good to set expectations, when folks are discussing the finance, to set those expectations early. So they know kind of what they're getting into, and it's not going to be a road bump.
So based on that, kind of two questions: is it better to buy sooner rather than later because of where the rates are going, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things at play. It's not just the rates. You're seeing, we're hearing, activity-wise, pricing is, I wouldn't say coming down in all facets. Maybe in certain parts of the market, pricing's coming down, values are coming down. So it's kind of I don't know where the defining
Sure, it's
point
pricing and rates. Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting, what we've seen in the pricing perspective is, while prices have kind of started to stabilize, they've kind of slipped a little bit from the peak that we had at the beginning of last year. I remember, just a legacy Citation 5 was like $800,000 back in 2019, 2020. It shot all the way up to almost $2 million at the peak. Now we're kind of seeing it stabilize around the 1.4 to 1.6 range. But what I'm seeing is, and kind of to your point, is it's not just the rates that are impacting that, but the sellers themselves don't have to sell. So it's not just because we have higher rates now the prices are going to down. If in the used market especially, if the sellers don't have to sell, they can wait for their price point.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things going on. It's definitely an interesting market. Light inventory for the last couple of years has kind of put us at a point where, supply demand, it's a topic of conversation. People sitting on the sidelines until they see, something change in regards to rates or maybe greater inventory, depending on whether you're on the buying side or the selling side.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to consider. I think the first quarter, maybe the first 2 quarters of 2023, will be a little bit of a different pace than what we've seen over the last couple of years, obviously. And then second half of 2023, I feel we get a little bit more into a groove.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So that's looking ahead to 2023. Now, if someone's looking to purchase an aircraft, there seems to be 2 large categories when it comes to financing on pre-owned aircraft. You've got the aircraft that's 20 years and newer, and the aircraft like the legacy aircraft that's 20 years and older. And of course, a lot of time it's driven by people's budgets, but if they're looking for something in the $500,000, $2 million, $3 million range, they're probably looking at older aircraft that, while they might be able to pay cash, sometimes it's in their benefit to go to a lender and try to secure financing for that kind of a purchase. So what can you tell us about the difference between lending on an older aircraft, 20 years or older, versus a newer one? Because it seems like lenders prefer the newer stuff. Is it impossible to lend on an older aircraft?
It is not impossible. Some of the parameters are going to be the same. It's just the availability of those same parameters being applicable on an older aircraft. Your jets. Your jet aircraft over 20 years, most lenders are still going to require, most if not all, are going to require the engines be on a program. Mm-hmm. The availability of that program or the significant amount of inventory already being on a program. So it's what's out there in the marketplace, and is it already on a program? Does it require a buy-in? In certain situations, will the lender allow the buy-in? Will they finance the buy-in for you? In some situations, it's going to be a diminishing return. Others, it's going to be a great investment. Mm-hmm. So that's on the older aircraft, and then even jets within that 20-year range. It's going to be somewhat of a similar conversation on jets that aren't on an engine program. Do you want to buy into a program and get your hourly maintenance put into place, so the lender feels comfortable with it. And that's really, at the end of the day, the lender sees the engines being the value driver of the aircraft. So they want to have that warm, and they want to know that risk is mitigated, right?
For sure.
So on the older aircraft, you want to make sure you're looking at that if you're looking for a loan, that it is going to be on a program. But the other part too is lenders are maybe a little more, I wouldn't say weary, but they want to see folks that have have jet experience on older aircraft. That's okay. A very helpful thing. So they have they're accustomed to the cost of owning and operating an aircraft. Whether it's they want to make sure they know all the pieces that are in place, because really only part of the transaction, or really only a fraction of the outlay of cash is going to be at the closing. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars after the fact on maintenance and
the cheapest part of owning a jet is buying one.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that the folks that are looking at the older aircraft, they do have some experience there, and it obviously goes without saying, but folks that have more capital or have deeper pockets, tend to help that underwriting process go a little bit smoother.
Gotcha.
People that are more. Yep.
I'm just kind of curious, what role will appraisals play in a finance deal?
Appraisal is a big piece. That's when you talk to the lenders, it's the whatever their LTV range is the lower of sales price or value. So when you have that appraisal come back light, it could cause the buyer to go back to the table, negotiate the price, or come with more cash out of pocket to get the deal done. And obviously it's an inflection point. They can make the decision at that point whether or not they want to proceed with the transaction. The appraisal is a big piece, and I think that is something that's going to drive, the next year or so as we see values kind of, they peaked a few months back, and as it cools off a little bit, you're going to see those start moving down, and the appraisal is going to be a big piece.
Yeah. What about 135 operations? I've had a lot of people calling me lately say, Tom, I've got a tax bill. I would love to have a jet. I only fly, a couple times, maybe like once a month or less, just for business or for personal. I love the idea of private aviation, but I'm thinking of buying a jet and putting it on a certificate at a local charter company. How does putting it on a certificate, does that impact how the bank sees that transaction? Do they shy away from 135 operations?
Depends on the lender.
Okay.
I know that's kind of a ambiguous.
For you as a lender, do you have access to different products or different banks or carriers? Is it like a broker kind of a thing, like insurance, or is it more just your captive lender?
I would consider us a finance broker, lending associates finance broker. I don't know if that's the most appropriate term, but we have numerous resources. So we have lenders that won't lend to individuals or businesses that want to put it into Part 135. We have folks that, or we have lenders that that's their mainstay. So it is having those options available to the customers that make, or the clients that make it beneficial to work with brokers like myself, because not every, it's not one size fits all. There's going to be a lot of different circumstances, different situations. So it's not just the collateral, it's, what their financial prowess is, what they want to use the collateral for, what type of ownership structure it's going to be. But yeah, there's plenty of lenders out there that, are okay with, now, I shouldn't say okay. They have programs set up, specifically for folks to operate under Part 135. Some of the differences would be, they may have hourly restrictions, so you want to look for that. Annual hourly restrictions, covenants restrictions in their loan agreements. They may have, they may not. So depending on how much they're going to use it. The Part 135, sometimes maybe the LTV maximum is different. Sometimes the terms and the amortization are different. Again, there's different pieces at play when it does have more of a commercial feel. Becomes more of a commercial underwrite, and what the cash flow looks like with and without some of that charter income.
Okay, that makes sense. Kind of starting to wrap up a little bit, but just two kind of questions and categories I want to talk about are requirements for financing. What kind of documents, what kind of history do lenders usually want to see? And then kind of dovetailing out of that would be what to expect in terms of the products. What kind of money down should they expect, terms, percentages, et cetera. So let's start with requirements for financing. If someone's coming to the table, let me ask you this question first. Do you prefer that someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy a jet. What can you approve me for? Or do you prefer if they come to you with a jet already selected? Because usually when someone calls me and I ask them, is this a cash or finance deal? One of the first things to say is, if it's a finance deal, have you talked to your bank already? So is this a chicken or the egg kind of a thing? Or is there a best practice for how do you approach a bank and say, I want to buy a private jet?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think pre-qualifications are a good thing. It helps people, have an idea of where they want to go. If they are an experienced, owner, they may already have an idea or have the wherewithal to know, their price point and what they can afford. They just need to go through the due diligence with the lender and so on and so forth. So I think everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. I think with light inventory, pre-approvals tend to be a little bit more of a go-to because it helps people understand what they can afford and really where they want to go. I don't have a preference. The process is remotely similar. You're collecting a lot of the same data, and when the collateral changes, as long as it's not too far down the road that and sometimes it is. Sometimes they've already done an appraisal. Sometimes they've already gone through inspections.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. And then they find something isn't what they expected or what they wanted. So then they change and move to a different aircraft, and the change of collateral is pretty simple. It's kind of but the process is pretty straightforward. The requirements for it, typically you're looking at least 2 years worth of returns, tax returns, business returns, and personal returns.
Okay.
Most lenders that are out there outside of a certain, I wouldn't say one-off, but very few and far between. Most lenders do require an individual guarantor. So you're going to have personal and business. Personal financial statement, most recent interim financial statements from the business, profit and loss statement, balance sheet. If they're flying the aircraft, sometimes it's helpful to understand their experience,
Sure.
what their certifications are, and how long they've been flying, whether or not they have aircraft ownership experience. If they're W-2, it's helpful to have W-2, maybe most recent pay stub, bank and brokerage statements. Liquidity is a big piece, especially as you move into the larger transactions. They want to know, what their cash reserves look like should something come up. It's usually not about whether or not they can get out from underneath the aircraft. It's, if it takes a couple months to sell the aircraft, how much do they have in pocket to cover, right? If some sort of, no one goes into buying an aircraft or getting a loan, with thinking, hey, something's going to happen over the next 2 years or whatever, unfortunately. So, they do look at liquid reserves, which is important. On more commercial fuel aircraft, where it may be in a Part 135 or, the OPCO is directly in the ownership structure, they may ask for 3 years. So it is helpful to have 3 years at the ready, both of business returns and year-end financial statements. So if it is more of a commercial underwrite and they're doing a debt, global debt service coverage or debt service coverage on the business specifically, they're going to want to see not just the returns, but they're going to want to see the year-end financial statements too. So.
Okay.
And then, for bigger businesses and bigger transactions, some lenders may go to the extent of requiring audited financials, but that's, I don't see
10 million,
that.
20 million.
Yeah, I don't see that too much. And sometimes when you get into those larger transactions, individuals or businesses may not want to provide anything. So then you may fall to an asset-based lender. And they have different options. They have different paths to get you to the finish line, which may not require some of the information that I stated earlier. It's going to be, and again, those are situational and typically, I don't know, we'll say 10 million plus transactions.
Gotcha. So, like I said, just kind of wrapping up then, what should someone inspect in terms of the products themselves? What does it usually look like? Money down, is it like 10% down, 50% down? I'm sure there's a range. The range of terms that you've seen on these kinds of jets, and then the interest rates, is it pretty much the same across lenders, or will interest rates change, and where are the interest rates currently as we're recording this?
Sure. Let's start with rates. I see rates in the market anywhere from about 6% all the way to 7.5%, depending on the circumstance. So it is a wide spectrum. We've seen rates change from 200 basis points, 250 basis points, maybe 275 basis points since September. So we have seen a pretty big spike over a very short period of time. Terms wise, on a consumer or a more consumer feel, underwrite, you could do 20-year fix. That's pretty typical. Once you get into more of a commercial feel, they may, some lenders may take it back to say a five-year balloon or 5-year arm, or 5-year adjustable, with a say 15-year or 20-year term, or 15 or 20-year amortization.
Okay.
Sometimes you will find a longer, term at some lenders. Just depends. That's why, you have a finance broker looking out for, your best interest, because you may want something that is very specific, and maybe only one or two lenders are able to offer it. Down payment wise, for say, I would say 15% is probably the minimal most lenders. Again, you have some larger transactions where they're asset based and they may go up a little bit more than that. But you see, say, older aircraft may jump down to 80% or even 70% LTV, or specific type of aircraft. Maybe the lender has 5 or 6 sweet spot manufacturers, and then anything outside of that may require more money down. But I would say, I would expect most people would be pretty comfortable with 15 to 20% down would be the.
Gotcha. That's great. Well, Eric, thank you so much. You shared so much fantastic information that I know will be helpful to the JetLife community, and definitely look forward to working with you, especially knowing that you have access to a number of lenders. I think that's in the consumer's best interest, where you're not just going to one bank and you're just kind of stuck there, but being able to reach out to a number of options is huge. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we head out?
I think one of the things is, we're in a market that is kind of at a inflection point right now. We're seeing, multiple things kind of coming to a head, and it is something that it doesn't mean you should stay out of the market. I think there's a lot of positive things that are coming, and I think we've been in a market where rates have been significantly low for a long time. And as rates settle, we'll see a little bit more consistency. But we're in an interesting time. And I look forward to seeing how things play out over the next few months. And I think everything is going to be very very good. I think 2023 is going to end very well for a lot of folks. And I think some folks tend to be a little bit weary just because of news or a lot of things coming on all at once. But you settle and you move forward the best you can. Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Eric. Really do appreciate it. And if you want to find out more about Eric and his company, or just go check out Lending Associates. Is it lendingassociates.com? Is that where they find you?
www.lendingassociates.com.
And are you guys on TikTok or anything?
I think we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, so no TikToks. Not yet anyways.
We'll find them there. That's awesome. Thanks again, Eric.
All right. Thanks, Tom.